Kevin Spacey, once the face of prestige television as Frank Underwood, didn't just fall, he was nearly erased. A two-time Academy Award winner and former artistic director of London's Old Vic, he commanded more than $10 million a year and the aura of a transformative chameleon. Then, in October 2017, a single allegation detonated a chain reaction that rewrote his career and Hollywood's rules. At his peak, Spacey embodied power. Oscars on the shelf, a Golden Globe for House of Cards, and industry reverence for range, craft, and control. He cultivated mystique intensely private, fiercely focused while steering one of the era's defining streaming dramas. The pedestal mattered. This wasn't just a bankable star, it was an institution. Which is precisely why the reckoning that followed would become a case study, not merely in personal downfall, but in how corporate, legal, and cultural pressures now converge to decide who gets to keep working in Hollywood. The unraveling began when actor Anthony Rapp accused Spacey of making a sexual advance toward him in 1986, when Rapp was 14. Published in late 2017, the account opened floodgates. Over a dozen men came forward with similar claims, suggesting a decades-long pattern. 8 House of Cards crew members described a hostile environment for young men on set. The docuseries Spacey Unmasked later surfaced additional allegations, including groping during his Old Vic tenure, with one production assistant calling the behavior common knowledge. Personal backstory entered the narrative. Spacey's brother described their father as a neo-Nazi and sexual abuser claims. Spacey acknowledged, citing childhood trauma as context for his lifelong secrecy and delayed coming out. But the attempt to pair an apology with a public declaration of sexuality ignited a new backlash from LGBTQ+ voices, who condemned the timing as a manipulative conflation rather than accountability. Courtrooms would not define the turning point studios, and spreadsheets would. An arbitrator ruled in 2020 that Spacey violated sexual harassment policies on House of Cards, ordering him to pay $31 million to MRC. Netflix terminated his contract, halted production, rewrote the season, and shortened the series. He was dropped by his talent agency and publicist, lost an International Emmy Founders Award, and saw Ridley Scott reshoot All the Money in the World, replacing him with Christopher Plummer at considerable cost. Then came Spacey's own miscalculation. Cryptic YouTube dispatches titled "Let Me Be Frank," delivered in the voice and menace of Underwood. Instead of contrition, audiences saw provocation, an eerie blur between character and accused man that hardened perceptions of denial and detachment. The spectacle crystallized a modern verdict. Legal outcomes might be pending, but the professional sentence levied by brands, platforms, and insurers had already been handed down. In court, Spacey avoided criminal conviction on both sides of the Atlantic. A 2022 New York civil case ended in his favor, and a 2023 London trial acquitted him. Outside court, the industry's judgment was unforgiving. Work vanished. Money followed. By 2024, he said legal fees had devastated him, forcing the sale of his Baltimore home to stave off foreclosure. A tentative re-entry began. Small European productions, a Lifetime Achievement honor from the Better World Fund at Cannes in 2025, and public endorsements from supporters like Sharon Stone and Liam Neeson signals, not guarantees, of reintegration. Spacey's story marks a threshold moment. In the streaming era, innocent in court can coexist with unemployable in practice. Corporate risk management, not just juries, now arbiters, careers, public sentiment, internal investigations, and brand safety can outweigh acquittals. His case draws a line Hollywood recognizes all too well. Legal innocence is not the same as professional redemption and forces the question of what true return would require. Armie Hammer. Armie Hammer's downfall was unlike any other surreal, grotesque, and meme-fueled. The Hollywood prince with aristocratic charm, best known for The Social Network and Call Me By Your Name, went from rising star to cultural punchline almost overnight. In 2021, leaked messages allegedly revealed fantasies of domination, bloodlust, and even cannibalism. What began as whispers of kink spiraled into a scandal so bizarre it destroyed his career. Born into wealth, the great-grandson of oil magnate Armie Hammer, Armie seemed destined for a golden career. Tall, handsome, and charismatic, he landed breakout roles. The Winklevoss twins in The Social Network, 2010. Then Oliver in Call Me By Your Name, 2017. Cementing him as a bankable leading man and queer cinema icon. Groomed for prestige, Hammer cultivated the image of an all-American star, wealthy lineage, clean-cut looks, and a trajectory aimed squarely at superstardom. But that pristine exterior masked darker allegations waiting to explode. In January 2021, an anonymous Instagram account began posting screenshots of Hammer's alleged private messages. They described graphic fantasies, rape, play, blood rituals, even cannibalism. "I am 100% a cannibal," one message read. At first, the internet laughed, dismissing it as a hoax. Then, ex-partners stepped forward. Courtney Vucekovich described psychological manipulation so severe she sought therapy for PTSD. Paige Lorenz claimed he carved his initials into her skin. The most serious allegation came from Effie, who accused Hammer of raping her in 2017, sparking a full LAPD investigation. Suddenly, what had seemed like lurid gossip turned into a harrowing picture of coercion, abuse, and violence. Hammer denied the claims, insisting his relationships were consensual, but the sheer volume and sensational nature of the accusations turned him from golden boy to tabloid monster almost instantly. The fallout was brutal and immediate. Within weeks, Hammer's career collapsed. He was dropped by WME, his agency, and his longtime publicist. He was fired or forced out of nearly every project on his slate. Shotgun Wedding with Jennifer Lopez, Paramount Plus The Offer, and the Broadway play The Minutes. In Ridley Scott's Next Goal Wins, his role was reshot entirely with Will Arnett. Financial ruin followed. Hammer was cut off from family wealth, and tabloids published photos of him working as a timeshare salesman in the Cayman Islands. By 2023, his fortune had plummeted from millions to near bankruptcy. Then came the legal twist. In May that year, Los Angeles prosecutors declined to pursue charges for lack of sufficient evidence. Hammer leaned into damage control, launching a podcast, reframing his narrative around trauma, claiming he was molested as a teenager, and painting his extreme desires as misunderstood explorations of consent. It was a desperate attempt to shift the story from predator to damaged survivor. The cannibalism memes, ironically, saved him from total erasure. They made the scandal luridly comedic, overshadowing the graver rape allegation. By turning into a meme, Hammer's story became easier for the public to consume, even as the accusations were devastating. His comeback strategy has been cautious. Small independent films, carefully curated interviews, a podcast designed to humanize him, but the mainstream remains closed. Studios view him as radioactive, not because of convictions, but because of optics. His name is now shorthand for Hollywood scandal in the age of viral spectacle. Hammer's saga illustrates a new dimension of blacklisting. Guilt mattered less than optics. He wasn't convicted, yet his reputation became too toxic for major studios to risk. The cannibal narrative, half horror, half meme, showed how digital culture can amplify scandal into career death. His story proves that in modern Hollywood, perception can be more lethal than evidence. Monique, Oscar winner, comedian, firebrand, wasn't cast out by scandal or crime. She was blacklisted for something more radical, saying no. After her ferocious turn in Precious, 2009, earned her the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress, she refused to play Hollywood's unspoken game. Declining to promote the film for free, she drew a label deadlier than any lawsuit: difficult. And in Hollywood, that word can bury you. Raised in Baltimore, Monique carved her path through stand-up comedy, television, The Parkers, and eventually film. Her role as Mary in Precious shocked audiences, a mother both monstrous and unforgettable, securing her Oscar and cementing her as one of the most formidable actresses of her generation. But instead of celebrating, the industry demanded more. Unpaid festival tours, constant gratitude, and silent compliance. When she resisted, the backlash revealed an ugly truth that behind the glamour, Hollywood enforces its order not only through contracts, but through expectations, especially for black women. In the wake of Precious, Lionsgate, Oprah Winfrey, Tyler Perry, and Lee Daniels expected her to campaign tirelessly, jetting around the world to Cannes and beyond on her own dime. Monique refused, citing prior paid commitments. Her talk show, comedy tours, her family. She had delivered the performance and fulfilled the contract. Wasn't that enough? Apparently not. Whispers of difficult began to circulate, quickly calcifying into an unofficial blacklist. For Monique, this wasn't just about a press junket. It was about equity. In interviews and onstage, she sharpened the point. Hollywood punishes black women who ask to be treated fairly. In her own words, she had been whiteballed by some blacks who had no balls, naming industry titans she felt betrayed her. The system wasn't reacting to arrogance. It was reacting to audacity. The audacity of a black woman refusing to labor for free. The controversy might have ended there, an Oscar winner fading into smaller roles. But in 2017, Netflix offered Monique just $500,000 for a one-hour comedy special. To the public, that number might seem generous. To Monique, it was insult. Dave Chappelle and Chris Rock had signed $20 million deals. Amy Schumer negotiated $13 million. Why was her value set at less than 5% of Schumer's range? Monique called it what she saw: systemic bias, racial and gender discrimination. She urged fans to boycott Netflix, sparking debate across media. Critics accused her of ego. She countered with facts. Then came the lawsuit. Filed in 2019, It alleged retaliation and discrimination. Against the odds, a federal judge allowed it to proceed. By 2022, Netflix settled quietly, but significantly. Months later, the same company released My Name is Monique, a Netflix original special. The circle had turned. The studio that once lowballed her was now paying to amplify her voice. Monique emerged not just vindicated, but victorious. Lee Daniels, after years of silence, issued a public apology and cast her in his Netflix horror project, The Deliverance. Tyler Perry and Oprah Winfrey, however, remained unresolved fractures in her story, reminders that reconciliation in Hollywood often stops short of full repair. Still, her legal battle, media strategy, and sheer persistence made her a rarity, a performer who forced the system to backtrack. The industry may not like her methods, but she re-entered on her own terms, not by compromise, but by confrontation. Monique's saga is less about one actress than about a system. She exposed the unwritten rules: be grateful, stay quiet, work for free when asked. By refusing, she demonstrated the price of defiance and also the possibility of survival. Her story stands as a cautionary tale and a rallying cry that sometimes equity demands not compliance, but conflict. Katherine Heigl. Katherine Heigl didn't fall because of scandal, crime, or abuse. She fell because she spoke. Once among Hollywood's highest-paid actresses, earning up to $15 million per film, Heigl seemed unstoppable. From Emmy-winning Grey's Anatomy to rom-com hits like 27 Dresses, she was America's sweetheart. But blunt honesty about sexism, long hours, and scripts turned her into Hollywood's cautionary tale. The actress labeled difficult and quietly erased from the A-list. Born in Washington, D.C., Heigl began as a child model before breaking through in television. Her role as Dr. Izzy Stevens on Grey's Anatomy transformed her into a household name, winning an Emmy in 2007. Soon after, she transitioned into films, starring in box office successes like Knocked Up, 2007, and 27 Dresses, 2008. At her peak, she was on par with male stars in both pay and demand, but unlike many actresses who stayed silent to protect their careers, Heigl voiced criticisms publicly. And Hollywood, at the time, had no patience for outspoken women. The first crack appeared in 2008. In a Vanity Fair interview, Heigl criticized Knocked Up, calling it a little sexist for portraying women as uptight and humorless while men were charming slackers. Director Judd Apatow and co-star Seth Rogen felt betrayed, and the press amplified the tension. That same year, she withdrew her name from Emmy consideration, claiming Grey's Anatomy hadn't given her material worthy of a nomination. The statement was interpreted as a jab at the show's writers, angering creator Shonda Rhimes and souring her relationship with the production team. In 2009, she went on The Late Show with David Letterman, complaining about 17-hour workdays. Though her critique of overwork would later echo labor movements in Hollywood, at the time she was branded ungrateful, biting the hand that fed her. Piece by piece, her reputation hardened into a blacklist defined not by crime but by candor. The difficult label stuck. Shonda Rhimes instituted a no-assholes policy, pointedly declaring there were no Heigls allowed on set. Studio executives stopped offering her major roles. By the early 2010 second, the actress who once stood at the top of the industry found herself relegated to low-budget projects and television pilots that never took off. Her career didn't collapse with a single scandal, it eroded through perception. The industry that once celebrated her was now punishing her for speaking truths ahead of their time, about sexism in comedy, about grueling television schedules, about the lack of respect given to actresses. Ironically, years later, her words would be reframed as prophetic, but at the height of her career, timing was everything. Heigl had said the right things too soon, too bluntly, and Hollywood decided it would rather silence her than confront the issues she raised. For nearly a decade, Heigl's career existed in a limbo of forgettable projects. But cultural tides shifted. By the 2022, conversations about labor, exploitation, and sexism in Hollywood became mainstream. In 2021, co-star Ellen Pompeo publicly defended Heigl, saying she was 100% right about working conditions. That same year, Netflix's Firefly Lane gave Heigl a comeback vehicle. As both lead actress and executive producer, she reminded audiences of her range, proving she could still command a screen and steer a project with maturity. Slowly, her reputation began to be reassessed. Heigl's story demonstrates how Hollywood's blacklist can hinge on timing as much as behavior. Speaking uncomfortable truths once branded her ungrateful. Today, those same truths are industry talking points. Her trajectory proves that sometimes survival isn't about reinvention, it's about waiting for the culture to catch up. She was punished for candor, but her return suggests honesty may eventually find vindication. Cuba Gooding Jr. Cuba Gooding Jr. shouted, "Show me the money," in Jerry Maguire and won an Oscar. For a moment, he was untouchable. But Hollywood careers don't die only from one scandal. They can erode slowly, allegation by allegation, until no one will pick up the phone. Gooding's downfall wasn't sudden fire. It was a slow fade into a blacklist, defined by repetition, whispers, and finally, headlines. Gooding rose fast in the 1992nd. After supporting roles in Boys in the Hood and A Few Good Men, his exuberant turn as Rod Tidwell in Jerry Maguire earned him an Academy Award in 1997. He seemed destined for a career of prestige and stardom. Instead, the years after his Oscar were filled with a mix of commercial misfires, Boat Trip, Snow Dogs, and low-budget projects. By the late 2010, his star was dimming. What came next wasn't one catastrophic scandal, but a flood of accusations that compounded the decline into something irreversible. In 2019, Gooding was arrested in New York for allegedly groping a woman at a rooftop bar. What might have seemed like an isolated charge soon expanded into dozens. Over 30 women eventually came forward, recounting stories of unwanted touching, forcible kissing, and groping, often in public places like clubs and restaurants. The portrait painted was less of a one-off mistake than a long-standing pattern. Criminal complaints focused on 3 cases, while one civil lawsuit alleged rape in 2013. A federal judge allowed testimony from other women to establish a pattern, heightening the stakes. Though Gooding denied the most serious claims, the legal cloud surrounding him grew darker. Even before verdicts, Hollywood had already responded. Studios backed away, insurers refused coverage, and projects evaporated. His career, already weakened by poor choices, now collapsed under the weight of accumulated misconduct. In April 2022, Gooding reached a plea deal, guilty to 1 misdemeanor count of forcible touching. In exchange, he avoided jail time if he completed counseling and stayed out of trouble. By technicality, his record was later reduced to a non-criminal violation, but the bigger bombshell came in the civil suit. A woman identified as Jane Doe accused him of rape in a Manhattan hotel room. The judge's decision to allow multiple women to testify underscored a pattern, not an anomaly. Just before trial in 2023, Gooding quietly settled the case. The undisclosed payout spared him from a courtroom spectacle, but cemented his public image. Guilty or not, he was a man studios could no longer touch. By 2024, additional lawsuits linked him to cases involving music mogul Sean Diddy Combs, ensuring his name stayed in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. His blacklist status was complete, reinforced not by one scandal, but by volume. The avalanche of accusations left Gooding radioactive in mainstream Hollywood. He turned instead to faith-based projects, a refuge for some fallen stars. In 2024, he headlined The Firing Squad, a Christian film, even leading an altar call at its premiere. The pivot framed him as a man seeking redemption through religion, not celebrity. Yet the scale of accusations over 30 women makes full rehabilitation in mainstream entertainment unlikely. His attempts to reframe his story as spiritual transformation may resonate in niche markets, but for studios, his name carries more liability than value. Cuba Gooding Jr.'s story shows how careers can die from accumulation rather than explosion. Without a single high-profile conviction, his name still became synonymous with misconduct. His case reveals how Hollywood calculates risk. Too many accusations, even without prison time, equal exile. His legacy is now split: Oscar-winning talent versus a cautionary tale of how allegations, when numerous enough, bury even the brightest stars. Rose McGowan. Rose McGowan's blacklisting wasn't about scandal, addiction, or criminal charges. It was war. Once a cult film starlet of the 1992nd Scream, The Doom Generation, she became one of the first voices to take on Hollywood's most untouchable power brokers. Her decision to expose Harvey Weinstein didn't just cost her roles, it cost her the industry itself. McGowan wasn't cast out quietly. She lit the match herself and watched Hollywood burn. In the mid-1992nd, McGowan was poised for stardom, striking beauty, offbeat charisma, and roles in films that made her both indie darling and mainstream recognizable. But her trajectory shifted from acting to activism after a traumatic assault in 1997 when she said Weinstein raped her at Sundance. For years, silence and NDAs buried the truth. When the Me Too wave rose in 2017, McGowan stood at its front lines, naming Weinstein directly. In doing so, she wasn't just speaking against a predator, she was taking aim at the entire structure that had protected him. By 2017, whispers became headlines. McGowan accused Amazon Studios of shelving her project after she reported Weinstein internally, linking her lack of roles directly to his influence. That same year, Time named her among the silence breakers. But the retaliation, she claimed, had already begun years earlier. In a 2019 lawsuit, McGowan alleged that Weinstein hired attorneys David Boies and Lisa Bloom, and even the Israeli intelligence firm Black Cube, to infiltrate her circle, pose as journalists, and sabotage her credibility. Agents befriended her under false pretenses, gathering details of her memoir, Brave. Though the case was dismissed on technical grounds, the allegations were chilling. Proof, she argued, of how far the machine would go to silence a woman who refused complicity. Unlike others who quietly settled or sought private redemption, McGowan turned every confrontation into a public battle, refusing to soften her words for allies or enemies. McGowan's confrontational style, however, cut both ways. At a 2018 book event, she clashed with a transgender activist, and her comments interpreted as exclusionary drew backlash from LGBTQ+ groups. She defended Asia Argento after accusations of sexual abuse against her surfaced, angering Me Too allies. She even tweeted an apology to Iran after a U.S. airstrike, calling the Democratic Party a deep cult. To some, these actions blurred the line between fearless truth-telling and reckless provocation. Hollywood, already hostile, now had reason to disown her entirely. Roles evaporated, projects disappeared. Unlike many who tried to craft redemption arcs, McGowan showed no interest in coming back. Instead, she shifted outward, publishing Brave, starring in the documentary series Citizen Rose, and releasing her music project Planet 9. She stopped playing by Hollywood's rules, building her own platform outside its gates. For McGowan, exile wasn't tragedy, it was liberation by fire. Professionally, McGowan's acting career all but ended. Small indie appearances aside, she transformed into an activist and outsider artist. Personally, she became both icon and pariah, applauded as a whistleblower, criticized as a provocateur. The very industry that claimed to celebrate her bravery had no space for her anymore. But her exile was not passive. It was chosen. She declared war, and Hollywood returned fire. The cost was total: roles, networks, and credibility within the mainstream system. Yet for many, she became a symbol of uncompromising defiance. McGowan's legacy is paradoxical. She is remembered less for her films than for her refusal to stay silent. She embodies the cost of truth-telling in an industry built on silence agreements and backroom deals. Her exile shows what happens when you don't just resist Hollywood, you attack it head-on. She didn't get blacklisted, she blacklisted herself, and in doing so, changed the conversation forever. Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson, action hero, Oscar-winning director, and once one of the most bankable stars on earth, didn't just stumble. He detonated his career with his own words so ugly they echoed worldwide. From Mad Max to Braveheart, he was Hollywood royalty. But a drunk driving arrest in 2006 and a series of racist, misogynistic tirades turned him from icon to pariah, proving even legends can be exiled. In the 1982nd and 92nd, Gibson was untouchable. The Lethal Weapon franchise made him a global action star, and Braveheart, 1995, earned him Oscars for Best Director and Best Picture. He had the rare combination of box office draw and critical acclaim. By 2004, his self-financed The Passion of the Christ grossed over $600 million, cementing him as a powerhouse who could bypass studios entirely. Wealthy, influential, and celebrated, he seemed immune to Hollywood politics. But when the cracks appeared, they weren't subtle, they were explosions broadcast across the world. The unraveling began in July 2006, when Gibson was arrested for drunk driving in Malibu. The arresting officer's report revealed an anti-Semitic tirade. The Jews are responsible for all the wars in the world. The fallout was immediate. Jewish organizations condemned him. ABC canceled a planned miniseries. Then came 2010. Leaked tapes of Gibson screaming at ex-girlfriend Oksana Grigorieva. On the recordings, he hurled racial slurs, told her she looked like a pig in heat, and warned, "If you get raped by a pack of N-words, it will be your fault." Hollywood recoiled. His agency dropped him. Studios distanced themselves. Gibson's reputation wasn't tarnished, it was scorched. What made it worse was his family context. His father, Hutton Gibson, was a Holocaust denier, casting a shadow over Mel's attempts at apology. For many, his behavior wasn't a one-off but part of a disturbing lineage of hate. The tapes cemented his exile. Unlike other scandals, this wasn't speculation. It was his voice, his rage, undeniable. For years, Gibson became cinematic poison, relegated to small-budget thrillers or villain cameos. No major studio wanted to gamble on him. Yet his immense wealth insulated him. Despite a $400 a million divorce settlement, he could finance his own projects. Then, in 2011, Robert Downey Jr. himself, a former pariah, publicly urged Hollywood to forgive Gibson. It planted a seed. By 2016, he directed Hacksaw Ridge, a World War II epic that earned 6 Oscar nominations, including Best Director. The Academy, that had once shunned him, was now applauding again. His comeback stunned the industry. A man once thought untouchable for all the wrong reasons was being embraced, not quietly, but at the highest level of awards prestige. The Gibson rule was born. Time, talent, and control over your own financing could bend even the harshest blacklist. Today, Gibson remains polarizing. To some, his rehabilitation proves Hollywood's selective amnesia, that money and box office potential matter more than hate-filled words. To others, his return illustrates genuine contrition and the enduring power of artistry. What cannot be denied is that he forced the industry to reveal its double standard. While sexual or physical misconduct remains career-ending, hateful speech, even on tape, can eventually be forgiven if profits are at stake. Gibson may never fully shed the stain, but he no longer lives in exile. Mel Gibson's story exposes Hollywood's hierarchy of sins. Words, however vile, are forgivable when paired with blockbuster success. His case shows that redemption in Hollywood isn't purely about morality. It's about leverage, wealth, and the ability to deliver results. For some, his return is proof of resilience. For others, it's proof that true accountability in Hollywood is still negotiable. Shia LaBeouf. Shia LaBeouf's fall wasn't a single scandal. It was a long, chaotic implosion. From Disney Channel prodigy to star of Transformers and acclaimed war drama Fury, he seemed destined for Hollywood's upper tier. But behind the talent lay volatility. Arrests, public breakdowns, disturbing allegations. His career became less a straight line than a demolition derby, where art, addiction, and abuse collided in front of the world. Born in Los Angeles, LaBeouf first found fame on Disney's Even Stevens, parlaying his boyish charm into blockbusters like Transformers. Soon he was cast in prestige projects like Fury and indie darlings like American Honey, earning praise as a raw, fearless performer. But Hollywood quickly learned the risk of his intensity. His artistic ambition often spilled into provocation, plagiarism scandals, bizarre performance art, and a combustible off-screen persona that left studios wary. For a moment, he embodied both promise and peril, the kind of actor who might win an Oscar or implode before 30. Even before the gravest accusations, LaBeouf's record was stained with erratic behavior. He plagiarized a short film, performed public stunts that blurred performance and breakdown, and collected arrests. Public intoxication, disorderly conduct, drunken tirades. In 2017, a Georgia arrest caught him on video, unleashing a racist rant at police, calling one black officer stupid and telling him he'd go to hell because of his skin color. Earlier, in 2011, he was filmed punching a man outside a bar. Each incident deepened the image of a troubled provocateur. Then came December 2020. Musician and ex-girlfriend FKA Twigs filed a lawsuit accusing him of sexual battery, assault, and emotional distress. She detailed harrowing abuse, being choked while asleep, threatened with car crashes, knowingly infected with an STD. Another ex supported her claims. The lawsuit painted not just an unstable artist, but a dangerous partner. LaBeouf's response was both confession and denial. He admitted to abusing myself and everyone around me for years, yet rejected key allegations. Agencies dropped him. He entered rehab. But the revelations kept spiraling. His semi-autobiographical film, Honey Boy, initially praised as a therapeutic masterpiece, was later disavowed by LaBeouf himself, who admitted he had lied in crafting its narrative. The blurred lines between confession and manipulation fractured trust further, and yet, amid the wreckage, reinvention took shape. Preparing for the role of Padre Pio, LaBeouf converted to Catholicism, publicly claiming faith had saved him. Then, in 2024, came the shock. Francis Ford Coppola cast him in Megalopolis. Walking Cannes' red carpet alongside the legendary director, LaBeouf resurfaced in the very spotlight many thought forever lost. For critics, the casting was an outrage. For Coppola, it was artistic faith. The contradiction was stark. Serious accusations unsolved, but career resurrection underway. Despite lawsuits and a damaged reputation, LaBeouf has never truly disappeared. Independent filmmakers value his intensity, while the myth of the tormented genius shields him from total exile. Studios still tread cautiously. His name carries liability, but elite endorsement, like Coppola's, grants him credibility that others accused of worse have never regained. The paradox is clear. The industry condemns him publicly yet accommodates him privately, allowing his career to limp forward in ways unimaginable for less artistically vital figures. His survival reveals the uncomfortable elasticity of Hollywood's so-called blacklist. Shia LaBeouf embodies the loophole. When talent is framed as tortured genius, allegations bend under the weight of artistic myth. His story questions Hollywood's double standard, why some disgraced actors vanish while others are shielded by narrative. For audiences, his career is no longer just about roles, but about whether art can or should excuse abuse. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that subscribe button. There's a lot more powerful stories, untold scandals, and hidden Hollywood truths coming your way. Don't miss what's next, because sometimes the most shocking stories are the ones the industry tries hardest to bury. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.